Hello, and welcome to ISUComm. Though your instructor may have already introduced you to the mission of ISUComm and the skills you'll have by the end of the semester, I'd like to emphasize something. You are now part of one of the most highly regarded composition programs in the country. While many other schools have strong writing programs and prepare students for proficiency in academic writing, Iowa State University's ISUComm program will keep you on the cutting edge of academic, professional, and civic communication with what we call our WOVE curriculum. At Iowa State University, we recognize that your future communication in classes and the work world will not only demand skills in written communication, but also oral communication, such as in presentations and customer relations, visual communication, such as effective data displays, video podcasts, and online newsletters, and also electronic communication, such as web writing and email. Because these many different modes of communication are multiple and varied, knowing what counts as an effective piece of communication may not always be easy for you or the audience. To help you and your instructor settle on a standard for what makes an effective communication artifact, ISUComm has created standardized rubrics to evaluate the projects you submit. In the remainder of this video, you will learn what a rubric is, how you should use it to shape your writing practices, and how it will help you develop as a writer literate in the multiple modes of 21st century communication practices. You'll also hear from a number of ISU instructors who have seen the immense value in using rubrics that help students develop competent communication skills in their ISUComm courses and beyond. So let's get started by asking the question, what is a rubric?
I think a rubric has a couple of different functions, and it brings together a lot of assessment issues that go on in instructors trying to provide feedback and information to students, and also for students to understand why they received the score they did. In a writing intensive course, what a rubric can do is provide a systematic approach for instructors to be able to provide feedback to students, and for students to have a good understanding of what those achievement levels are. A rubric typically is represented as a matrix, a table, and each row signifies a certain category of what the instructor is looking for, and each column is the level of achievement. And ultimately, those add up or can add up to a score, so a student understands why they received a particular grade that they did. The other thing that rubrics do that is really great, I think, for both instructor and student is that it puts to paper and words those most common types of situations or levels of achievement the instructor is looking for and that the student needs to succeed at, so that when other types of feedback are joined with those rubrics, it can be more student specific on particular types of issues that a specific student made, rather than those broad generalizations that all students might be having trouble with.
Your instructors will be using one of two methods to provide feedback with the ISUComm rubrics. The first is with paper rubrics, as we've shown here. Or your instructor will be using ThinkSpace, an electronic rubric system for providing consistent feedback. Whether your instructor uses paper or the electronic system, all instructors will use the same method for arriving at a score. So how will a rubric help you succeed in ISUComm? There are a number of ways the rubric will help your writing process and your self-assessment as you move from assignment to assignment.
Now, when students first start using rubrics, they don't usually look at them. You know, they just think, I know what I'm writing, and they'll write, and then they get the assessment back with the rubric and like, oh, I should have looked at the rubric. A lot of the battle of using rubrics is to get the students to look at it. And so I usually try to get students to self-assess their documents using a rubric first before they hand it in, and then even attach that rubric to their assignment so that I know if they've looked at the rubric and understand, you know, what excellent work was and what good work was and what poor work was at the same time.
I think it helps break a larger assignment down into smaller, manageable chunks. Like the first thing that you have to think about is what content, the substance that you're going to put into a paper. Then you have to think about how you're going to organize it. Then you have to think about how you're going to express it, what words you're going to choose and the tone. And then you have to think about how you're going to deliver it. Are you going to put it in a historical type documentation style? You're going to give a scientific style?
One thing that's really great about rubrics is it does break down how you need to approach the writing process. Writing process can seem very overwhelming to any of us. So what the rubric does, and what English 150 at Iowa State does, is help break it down into 5 different categories. You're going to hear about that throughout the semester, and the more that you can start taking in those categories and making them meaningful to yourself, the more quickly you can identify, oh, I see what I need to do on the next paper to make it better. We are very concerned in this, I think, day and age in this department to make sure that just because you're in one section, and every instructor has a unique way of reaching their students, but as far as your work, we're looking for a more consistent way to say, regardless of who you had as an instructor, and also for the instructor, regardless of which student is being graded or assessed, that it is based on achievement and not a subjective process. I think that the relationship of the rubric between instructor and student, in addition to creating that transparency, is that it sets up expectations for the instructor to be true to what they're communicating to students is important. And then for the student to own those expectations, and that if there's a misunderstanding or an element that is not totally resonating, that they create this dialogue with the instructor. So looking at even where you perform best and where you perform least, you can think about where's my best, where's it going to make the most difference for me to focus my attention.
You learn best when you go back and you figure out where the problem is, and then you think through how to fix it and figure out how to do it on your own. So you're not always going to have an English teacher with you writing those papers in those junior and senior level courses.
The rubric is a base communication tool, and it should be the platform by which student takes accountability, instructor takes accountability, and you meet in the middle to do your best to take information that is being communicated and engage with it to produce the best communication, the best writing that you are able to.
The ISUComm Rubric is a tool you can use to identify your strengths and weaknesses, to develop writing strategies, and to create a dialogue between you and your instructor. The rubric ensures consistent grading across the ISUComm program, regardless of student, teacher, or assignment. Now that you know what a rubric is and how to use it, you are on your way to developing the communication skills necessary for succeeding in ISUComm and the many communication experiences you'll have in the future.